ang mabansang awit ng Pilipinas. pinakalihan at walang pinakalihan ang programa ito. Ang programa ito ay paglusad sa makakalinan at trabaho lamang.
Female voice, male voice, Wally voice, monster voice.
Okay, anong time check natin sa umaga ito mga suki-suki natin, no? Okay. Ano na po? Halos hindi na makita po, no? Okay, 59 minutos. Okay, pasado po alas 6. Ang araw ito, araw ng Huwebes. Okay, 24 ng Mayo 2024. Okay. Araw ng Huwebes, no? Ayan. 24 Mayo 2024. Ganda, no? Ayan. Okay, papasok ang regular na program. Okay, ang consolidated news natin, no? Magandang umaga sa inyo. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And then, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, no? So, okay, papasok naman. Okay, sa platform po ng ADLSN TV News Online Corporation, ang programa Halo-Halo Special Opinion Balita at iba pa, no? Okay, kasama serbisyo publiko tinig ng mamamayan at saka ugnayan sa mamamayang. Maganda, no? Serbisyo, tapos may kasamang mga sponsor, tapos pamigay sa tao. Oh, the best na po mga suki, na. Ayan. Yun ang the best. Ayan ang unang natin balita ng hangin. Weather update. Okay, si Alice Sarata ito Aurelio, na. Okay. Nung doon ako sa Cotabato ng matagal, okay, suki-suki natin itong tao, itong mga suki, na. Alisar Aurelio ng weather forecast, no? Okay, so okay, pakinggan natin kung anong latest po sa mga travelers. Parang may bagyo, no? Agbon. Okay, pakinggan natin, no? Okay, para siya na magbalita sa inyo. Kayo mga travelers, maghanap buhay. Okay, part of Mindanao medyo iwasan na yung tinamaan itong namumuong bagyo mga sukil, no? Ibig sabihin LPA. Ayan. Alisa, sige, magbalita ka, no? Okay. Sige, antayin natin Ayan. Haba naman na listarya. Okay.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Naging bagyo na po ang low pressure area nasa east po ng Mindanao. Ang pangalan ay Aghon.
Aghon, no? Aghon.
Kasalukuyan, ang bagyong Aghon ay kumikilos pakanluran sa bilis na 30 kilometers per hour. Ang layo po na sentro ng Aghon ay nasa 350 kilometers silangan ng Hinatuan, Surigao del Sur. Ang lakas ng hangin na taglan nito ay umaabot sa 45 kilometers per hour samantala ang pagbugso ng hangin ay nasa 55 kilometers per hour. At dahil sa bagyo, nagtaas na po tayo ng Tropical Cyclone Wind Signal number 1 sa Eastern Samar, Dinagat Island, Siargao Island, at Bukas Grande Islands. Ang mga lugar nito ay inaasahan po na makakaranas ng maulap na kalangitan na may mga pamisa-misang malalakas na pag-ulan at pagbugso ng hangin. At sa ating forecast track ng bagyong Aghon, inaasahan po natin na ngayong umaga ay lalapit o maglalandfall sa vicinity ng Eastern Samar bilang isang tropical depression. Pero inaasahan po natin lalakas ang bagyo. Maaari pong mayang hapon o mamayang gabi magiging tropical storm ang bagyong ito kapag ito'y nasa silangan ng Bicol region. At maaaring lumakas palalo ang bagyong ito bukas o sa araw po ng Sunday. Inaasahan po natin na magiging severe tropical storm. At pagdating po ng Martes next week, aabot po ng isang typhoon category hanggang sa paglabas ng ating Philippine Area of Responsibility. Dahil sa bagyo, may inaasahan tayong malalakas na pag-ulan. Umaabot po ng 50 hanggang 100 millimeters ang dami ng ulan sa Surigao del Norte, Dinagat Islands, northern portion ng Surigao del Sur, ganoon din po sa eastern portion ng Southern Leyte, at ganoon din po sa southern portion ng Eastern Samar. Bukas, may inaasahan pa rin tayong malalakas na pag-ulan sa Eastern Visayas, Bicol Region at sa Dinagat Island. At sa araw ng linggo, inaasahan pa rin tayong malalakas na pag-ulan sa Catanduanes, Camarines Norte at Camarines Sur. At dahil dito, sa mga kababayan po natin sa mga nabanggit na lugar, mag-ingat na po tayo at alamin po ang ating ligtas na lugar dahil sa malalakas na pag-ulan na posibleng magdulot ng pagbaha o pagguho ng lupa. At sa ating pagdating po sa malalakas na hangin dulot ng bagyo, sa mga lugar po na sa ilalim ng Tropical Cyclone Signal number 1, nasa po na minimal to minor impacts sa mga lugar nito. At sa base sa ating forecast track, maaari po may mga ilang lugar pa sa Eastern Visayas at Caraga Region ay posible po na nasa ilalim po ng wind signal number 1 sa susunod na ating bulletin. Kapag hindi magbabago ang bagyo, lalo po sa kanyang track, pinakamataas pong wind signal ay aabot ng number 2. Yan po ang ating weather update at sa ating binabantayang bagyo. Mula sa Pag-asa, ako po sa Alzardi Aurelio.
Okay, so yan ang news briefing, no? Okay, huwag kayo update with the update. Huwag kayo gaano punta dyan po sa Samar area, mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Ayan. Okay, so balikan po natin anong susunod na balita, no? Okay, sandali lang.
Female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.
Awesome! Awesome! Awesome!
Okay, susunod na balita natin, tingnan natin, no? Okay. Ayan. Nako. Bakit yun napunta doon? Okay, sandali lang, no? Nawala, sayang.
I've used instant
Grabe.
forms within lead ads.
Nawala. Ito na pumasok yun, no? Okay, gusto kasi ito ang nakarelated sa kapayapaan, no? Kaya hinanap ko talaga. Itong governor po ng governor po ng Maguindanao del Sur, no? Okay. Governor Mariam Sangki mga mungudadato, no? Okay, naalala ko ay nung first siya pumasok sa politika, no, mag-governor, okay, sa bayan ng lalawigan po ng Maguindanao del Sur, no? Okay, sama-sama kami sa kanila kasi kami ang team ng news sa unang termino niya pagpasok sa politika, mga pang governor, no? Okay, pakinggan natin. Okay, si Governor by Mariam Sangki, no?
Taos-puso po kami nagpapasalamat. And of course, this is the initiative of our beloved President tungo sa isang makabagong Pilipinas. Nais ko pong, I would like to acknowledge also the presence of the municipal mayors to please stand up, the vice mayors, the councilors, the provincial level, the barangay captains of the province of Maguindanao del Sur. Mahal na Presidente, sila po ang walang kapagurang tutulong at susuporta sa ngalan ng bagong Pilipinas. Maraming salamat po. Of course, before anything else, I'd like also to introduce to you the initiative of the province of Maguindanao kung paano natin tinugunan ang ating former violent extremists. Kung paano natin tinugunan na mabago ang mukha ng lalawigan ng Maguindanao at dahil na riyan po, kapag sama-sama natin, iahon ang lalawigan ng Maguindanao. Mahal na Presidente, ang lalawigan po ng Maguindanao del Sur, meron po tayong tinatawag dito, the Arm to Farm Project of Maguindanao. Katunayan, ang lahat po ng mga nandito ngayon, karamihan po nito, nasa 99% ay pawang mga dating kombatant na ngayon ay kabahagi na natin sa gobyerno, sa pamahalaan ngayon. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. At alam ko po na ang lalawigan ng Maguindanao, sa ating internal revenue allotment, dyan po natin kinukuha ang tinatawag nating pangmatagalang solusyon kung paano natin wakasan ang tinatawag nating former violent extremists. Mahal na Presidente, nais ko po ipakita sa inyo through our visual presentation, noong nakaraan po, dumating po sa aming mahal na lalawigan ang ating former D&D Secretary na si Secretary Lorenzana, and of course, kasama po natin doon. Dati dumating sa ating lalawigan ang ating CGPA na si Sir Galido, dumating po rin po sa ating lalawigan ang kasalukuyang DND na si Sir Gibo Chidoro. Nasaksihan po niya kung paano natin wakasan ang ating former violent extremists sa lalawigan ng rehiyon. Namigay po tayo rito ng mga long-lasting livelihood tulad ng mga traktora, tulad ng mga kumota o tinatawag nating kuliglig, at tulad po ng kabuhayan ng mga widow of war. At yan po ay kasangga po natin ang men and uniform to monitor the activities of these combatants na magbalik loob sa gobyerno. At ngayon, nandito po ang ating mahal na Presidente sa tapat po nating lahat upang dugtungan niya at alam po niya na ang lalawigan ng Maguindanao, ito po ay kinakailangan bigyan pansin dahil unang-una, when we speak about Maguindanao, the perception is very much different. But alam ko, sa ilang araw na pagsasama ng mga PSG, ng protocol, ng lahat ng mga kasamahan ng ating Presidente, tahimik po ang lalawigan ng Maguindanao. At para po sa kaalaman ng lahat, we are just 3 minutes away from the province of Sultan Kudarat. This is the first municipality right after the boundary of Sultan Kudarat province. So we are just 3 minutes away lang po, mahal na Presidente. Maliban po sa arm to farm na binibigay natin sa ating former violent extremists, yan po ay libre natin binibigay maging ang binhi, maging ang abono, at hanggang sa pag-harvest nito, ang lalawigan po ng Maguindanao ang bumibili. At libang po yan, we have 509 violent extremists na nagbalik loob sa gobyerno, of course, with the JAPIC. We have joined Armed Forces of the Philippines, the Philippine Army to certify them. Liban po yan, we have a newly launched program para po sa kaalaman ng lahat, ang pagtatanim po ng tobacco sa ating lalawigan. Ang binhi po ng tobacco at ang dryer, ayan po ay libreng binibigay po ng ating lalawigan Maguindanao del Sur upang mawakasan ang violent extremists sa lalawigan at sa buong lalawigan ng rehiyon. sa mahal nating Presidente, and of course, during the last visit ng ating Presidente sa lalawigan ng Maguindan ng Sultan Kudarat, nagkausap po kami ng ating Special Assistant to the President. My salute to you, Sir Secretary Sap Anton, sa pagbibigay, sa pagpapaigting na magkakaroon ng mandato o ng eleksyon ang parlamentaryo sa lalawigan sa rehiyon ng Bangsamoro Government. Maraming salamat, mahal na Presidente, sa pagdedeklara na magkakaroon tayo ng eleksyon tungo sa isang makabagong Pilipinas, tungo sa isang makabagong Maguindanao, towards a peaceful, unified, reconciliated, empowered Bangsamoro Government. We are calling for the unification at ako po'y masaya nakasangga ko rito at nakasama natin ang Governor ng Maguindanao del Norte. Maraming salamat, Kaka, dahil katunayan kami po ay magkakamag-anak. So sa ating lahat, ito po ang lalawigan ng Maguindanao, tungo sa isang makabagong Maguindanao, tungo sa isang makabagong Pilipinas, sama-sama tayong babagong muli. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat, sa presensya ng bawat isa. Muli, ito ang gobernador ng lalawigan ng Maguindanao, Governor Bay Mariam Sangki Manguda Dato, ang inyong agila ng Maguindanao. Magandang umaga, and sukran and wasalam. Ang aking pagbati sa ating mahal.
Okay. Agila ng Maguindanao. Okay, si Bay Mariam Sangki Manguda Dato, no? Sa unang takbo niya, ay sama-sama kami sa kanya, no? May mga team ng media po noon, okay, kasama-sama siya, no? Okay, ibig sabihin ay swerte. Okay, swerte po mga suki, no? Okay, Governor Bay Mariam Sangki Manguda Dato, hindi na po kaya mag-cover itong okay, kaibigan sa media mga suki, no? Naalala niya yan, hindi niya makalimutan yan. Ayan. Hindi niya makalimutan yan. Ang mukha ito mga suki, mga kababayan. Noong panahon, una siya tumakbo po ng gobernador ng Maguindanao Province, mga suki, no? Maguindanao buo pa yun. Maguindanao Province, ngayon ay Maguindanao del Sur na. Okay. Ayan ang kasaysayan po mga suki, mga kababayan. At saka salamat din. Okay, mga tulong-tulong niya nang kasakit ako. Okay, natulungan po ako ilang beses ba yun? Okay, 3 beses ba yun o 4 na beses? Okay, tulong po ng governor na ito, no? Okay, hindi ko makalimutan din. Okay, ang kanyang kabaitan, okay, sa pagtulong po sa kapwa, no? Hindi naman ako maganda nun. Okay, pero tinulungan niya ako, no? Okay. So, yan po, pero sa sakit yun. Kasakit ako noon. Okay. Matinding sakit, na hospital ako. Ayan po, mga suki, no? Ayan. So, memory of the past. Ayan po. So wala na, hindi ko na kaya mag-cover pa sa field. Okay, masakit na ang aking tuhod. Ayan po mga suki, na. Okay, pero pag dito pa sa studio, wala tayong problema, no? Okay, sa pag-broadcast, okay, sa pagbanggit ng mga pangalan, okay, mga kandidato, wala pa problema. Kayang-kaya po ng boses natin po, kasi yun ang kasanayan natin. Okay, magbanggit-banggit ng mga kandidato po sa halalan, mga suki, na. Ayan. Yun naman ang laging kong trabaho, na. Okay, sandali lang. Saan tayo pupunta? Okay, sa gera pa rin? Okay. Sige po.
organization walang Pilipinan, walang kinakampihan, at walang pinaginilan ang programa ito. Ang programa ito ay public service sa makakalinan at trabaho lamang.
Okay. So, sige po mga kababayan, sandali lang, no?
Female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.
Okay, dito lang sa studio ito, pang 13 taon ko na, no? Meron ako nauna sa radio, AM radio, and then okay, FM radio, no? Okay, so ilang taon na kaya sa microphone lang mga suki, mga kababayan, habang-haba na, no? Okay, sobra na ata 20 katuig, 20 years maghawak po ng microphone, no? Matagal na. Ayan. Ito lang sa news online ko ito, pang 13 taon na, no? Okay, pang 13 taon. And then meron pa sa nauna sa radio. Okay. So, yan po ang kasaysayan. Okay, ng inyong abang lingkod, no? So, saan tayo pupunta? Okay, hanap tayo ng may balita natin, no? Okay, pupunta tayo sa UN live ngayon, UN on Genocide, mga kababayan. Kahit kalahati lang, no? Kasi haba ng na-consume natin sa oras. Okay, pasensya kayo, mga isang oras lang ang programa natin, no? UN live on Genocide. Okay, dyan po sa Gaza Strip, mga suki, no? Okay, sa Palestine. Sa Palestinian coast, magharap ng kapayapaan, hindi pa rin matagpuan po ang kapayapaan, no? Okay, so pakinggan natin ng UN kung ano ang debate nila rito tungkol sa genocide, no? Okay, sandali lang.
Raping and killing of the people in Gaza. More than 35,000 lives have been lost, mostly women and children.
Live ito, no?
80,000 predicted to remain under the rubble. 1.1 million people are on the brink of famine, and with the assault of Rafah, there is nowhere safe for the 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. If there is one thing that we must learn from Srebrenica, is that inaction is not an option. Mr. President, the late Kofi Annan said, and I quote, "The tragedy of Srebrenica will forever haunt the history of the United Nations." And here we are, following 2 ESS resolutions, 3 Security Council resolutions, and 2 ICJ provisional measures on Gaza. The UN remains paralyzed, unable to influence the situation on the ground. Therefore, as a principal position over this grim and sobering circumstance, Indonesia has voted in support of the draft resolution. Let us not tarnish the solemn memory of Srebrenica with our inaction in Gaza. If we do not want history to repeat itself, we must all be firm in upholding international law and the UN Charter. We must reject double standard, and I repeat, we must reject double standard. We must put to ourselves a sense of responsibility and commitment to justice and humanity. Mr. President, this
Okay, UN organization. Okay, if the just in case if the arrest warrant not issued to Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant et al. And also the leader of Hamas, okay, to Ismail Haniyeh and et al. Okay, do not mention, okay, United international law, international humanitarian law, no? Okay, please do not mention, okay, to the global citizen, what you call international humanitarian law, no? Okay. Wala eh. Kung hindi ma-serve ang arrest warrant na yan, ay ganun din mga suki. Walang katapusan po, okay, pag patay ng civilian po mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Okay. So, yan ang aking analysis. Kung hindi po ma-issue ang arrest warrant po kay Benjamin Netanyahu, ay Yoav Gallant and et al. International humanitarian law is useless. Okay, walang puwang, walang halaga, wala nang sumusunod mga suki, mga kababayan, no? So patay na lang ng patay mga leader, mag-abuse na lang mga leader. Okay, kung walang hindi nila na ma-issue po ito ni Honorable Prosecutor Karim Khan. No more law. Okay. Wala. Ganun lang po. Paikot-ikot lang po ang kaya useless po ang the organization of the United Nations, no? Is useless if you have if the international law has no teeth, mga kababayan, no? Walang ipin, has no tooth. Ayan. So, wala po nang mangyari sa atin, no? Kaya nga, ako'y mag-insist, okay, dapat ma-serve po yung, para ma-lecturean, okay, para ma-lecture, okay, na hindi po gagawin ng mga leader, pumatay, magkaroon ng mga ganitong genocide, mga suki, no? Yun ang purpose natin, bakit natin, okay, dapat ma-issue yung, sa mga violent leader, mga abuse leader, magkabilang panig, Hamas leader and the Israeli leader. This arrest warrant must be success. Okay. Kung wala din, ganun din. Wala mangyari po mga suki, no? Okay, sa kalagayan po ng daigdig, mga suki, no? Mga tagapakinig. So, yan po ang pwede pag-isipan po ng ICC. Yang dapat may serve po ang arrest warrant, no? Dapat kasi walang exempted, no? Kahit sino pa siya. Basta sumasagasa ng batas, walang exempted, mga suki, no? Ayan. Sige. Pakinggan natin.
Despite our support, we regret that this resolution had to be put to a vote. Such an important moment of remembrance should have been a unifying moment for the sanctity of the memory of the victims We truly wish that this resolution could have been approached differently with a more inclusive negotiation process.
Okay. For those who oppose, let's say, for those nation to oppose to the issuance of arrest warrant must be a complicity. Kasama sila sa kaso ito mga suki, no? For those leader, for those nation, okay, who supported Israel, must be a complicity in the case of genocide. Okay. Hindi po pwede ma-exempted. Kasi wala nang batas, wala nang maniwala. Okay, ang global citizen, kasama ako. Ang global community, kasama ako. Wala nang maniwala. Sino pa paniwalaan? No one believe, okay, to the United Nations Organization, this case of genocide has get to nutshell mga suki mga kababayan. Walang maniwala na. Maniwala kayo. Ayan. Sige.
To reach a consensus text. Consensus will have made this remembrance a forward-looking one. A remembrance that embraces all in sincerity and lays a solid foundation for reconciliation. Indonesia therefore continues to emphasize that this remembrance must be accompanied by a comprehensive, inclusive, and forward-looking reconciliation efforts to create a condition conducive for sustainable peace and stability for the true benefits of the people in the region and beyond. Thank you.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of Indonesia, and I now invite to the floor the distinguished representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you. In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, at the outset, I would like to express my profound gratitude to the numerous delegations, permanent missions, international organizations, and regional groups who at the various levels expressed their condolences and sympathy to the people and government of Islamic Republic of Iran in mourning the loss of the President and Foreign Minister. Mr. Raisi and Mr. Amir Abdullahian and deceased companions were highly respected and loved by the Iranian people. This week, millions of Iranians across the country demonstrated their profound respect to this distinguished figure, including in funeral ceremony. Their tireless efforts in serving the Iranian people were exemplary of their firm dedication to their beloved nations. Their contribution to development, human dignity, cooperation, as well as to strengthening peace and security and friendly relations in the region and beyond will be remembered. They will remain an everlasting source of inspiration for our people and anyone who aspires just cause of noble purposes in the world. Mr. President, as for the present resolution, I would like to mention that the Islamic Republic of Iran has been clear in rejecting atrocious crime, in particular the catastrophic events that took place in Srebrenica. Our vote in favor of the resolution adopted today manifests our conviction to supporting and sympathizing with the victims of the Srebrenica genocide.
Okay, kasi kung ma-issue itong arrest warrant, meron deterrent, meron ba example, okay, sa mga leader mag-abuse sa kapangyarihan, okay, kumitil ng buhay na wala na mga, okay, wala bang valor, walang reason, okay, mga inosenteng civilian, may example ba, okay, may deterrent, okay, na hindi gawain na uli po ng mga leader pag maisuhan ito arrest warrant, no? Kailangan malakas ang bunganga natin dito, dapat po maisong arrest warrant mga suki, no? Okay. Para wala nang mangyari pa mga okay, patayan, mass killing po sa buong daigdig mga suki, no? Yun ang pangarap natin. Ayan. Bakit natin ginagawa ito? Okay, delikado pa naman. Bakit natin ginagawa itong trabaho natin mga suki, no? Kasi kung wala nang maglakas ng loob, katulad ng Al Jazeera, ng may independent news, wala na. Wala nang kabuluhan po itong daigdig natin, no? Okay. Wala nang kabuluhan. Okay. Bulok na sistema na. Ayan. Sige.
In 1995, honoring and remembering the victims of in Bosnia and Herzegovina should unite people and inspire global rejection of atrocious crimes. Through our support, we also pay tribute to our fallen heroes, several Iranian nationals who were martyred for the valuable objective of assisting the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina in the course of those unfortunate events. Regrettably, at the time the international community felt the world's conscience, leaving innocent people to fall victims to the most serious crimes. The Srebrenica massacre was indeed a dark page in the history of humanity and the United Nations. Mr. President, Excellencies, the Islamic Republic of Iran retraced its principal position in supporting peace, stability and security in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Balkan region, in the spirit of dialogue and understanding where the peaceful existence of all people of the country and the region, regardless of their ethnicity and religion, could be maintained and strengthened. We further retrace the importance of respecting the territorial integrity of the countries in the region. We highlight the necessity for an inclusive, faith approach to preserving peace and enduring stability. This endeavor must encompass all individuals, ensuring that no one is left behind. Mr. President, speaking of atrocious crime, I would like to mention that we have not forgotten that millions of Iranian people, almost 1/4 of the Iranian population at the time, suffered genocide from 1917 to 1919 due to the certain foreign countries' political agenda, which caused severe deprivation of food and vital resources, leading to a large-scale famine and starvation. Let us also not forget that those who lost their lives in Srebrenica were not only victims of egregious crimes incited by individuals, but they were also victims of power politics and failures of certain Western countries, including those who were in the form of peacekeepers at the time of the occurrence of this tragedy. The fact remains that those countries who should bear responsibility together with NATO for their failure that plunged Srebrenica into catastrophe back in 1995 are now among the sponsors of these resolutions. This sobering fact, coupled with the current development at the international level, in particular the catastrophic situation in Gaza, should make all of us doubtful of the real intention of certain Western countries, as the situation of Palestine has proven that reveal the stark manifestation of the chronic double standards and selectivity of few. Mr. President, the current catastrophic situation in Palestine and the binding order rendered by the principal judicial organ of the United Nations on this matter are the most relevant topics to the discussions with respect to the present resolution. We regret that this very relevant and important matter has been ignored. Nevertheless, the adoption of this resolution should serve as a reminder of the responsibilities of the United Nations that it owes to each and every single Palestinian woman, man and child. We believe that the United Nations should not make the same mistake it made in 1995. The painful lessons of the past that have indeed cost heavy.
Okay, gusto ko lang ipaliwanag na ako kasi may mga patutsada ba? Okay, may mga patutsada sa mga messenger ko. Okay, na kung ano raw position ko sa global community, sa international community. Wala akong position, no? Okay, maliwanag, wala akong position. Pero nakakonect lang yan yung mga trabaho ko sa tinatawag na yung mga ganon. Pero position, wala akong position. Okay, sa mga organization po katulad ng UN, wala akong position mga suki, no? Ayan. Pure lang ito, volunteer public service, okay, sa kapwa mga suki, no? Ayan. Hindi ako nagtatrabaho po sa halimbawa United Nations, wala po. Ayan. Concern lang po ito doon. Ay sa tawag po serbisyo, okay, publiko, tinig ng mamamayan. Yung trabaho, wala ako trabaho sa mga outside. Okay, hindi ako representative ng Pilipinas. Okay, pure volunteer work lang ito. Okay. Okay. Kusang trabaho lang, no? Okay, kusang trabaho lang. Hindi ako member po ng mga iba yung organization, no? Ayan. Gusto ko lang mapaliwanag yun. Kasi maraming patutsada kung ano raw trabaho ko sa UN o kaya ibang organization, no? Purely civilian, purely ako ay global citizen, mga kababayan, no? Yun. Ayan.
To be learned should compel humanity to avoid, prevent, and stop the recurrence of similar catastrophes. I thank you.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and to now invite the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation to take the floor.
Mr. President, before I make my explanation of vote, I would like to raise one issue. Consider it as a matter of a point of order. And I count you will deduct the time allotted to me for my explanation of vote from the statement I'm going to make now. Before the vote, Mr. President, you gave the floor to the distinguished representative of Serbia. I would like to remind you that this is not a distinguished representative of Serbia. This is the President of Republic of Serbia, and I think that you should have recognized it, respected his high office, and addressed him accordingly. Now I'm coming to the explanation of vote.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, we have witnessed today a sad chapter in the history of the United Nations General Assembly. A number of delegations led by Germany decided to abuse the authorities of General Assembly, and under the guise of a resolution to declare a day of commemoration, pass a political declaration whose goal is, despite the statements made by sponsors that it's the opposite, whose goal is to demonize one of the peoples of the former Yugoslavia, to undermine the Dayton Peace Agreement and the Security Council Resolution 1031, which endorsed it. It is not surprising, therefore, that the non-consensus resolution, which was passed by a vote, not only doesn't call for the implementation of Dayton, it doesn't even mention it. And the non-consensus resolutions were passed with not at all the number of votes that the sponsors hoped for. A greater number of UN members did not support the resolutions than did. We have amongst the sponsors of the resolution a permanent representative of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and here he exceeds his authority. According to the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is part of the Dayton Agreement, submitting the text of the resolution today was something that should have been agreed by all of the members of the joint presidency of the country. We think that this is yet another confirmation of the consistent line of a part of Bosnia elites and their Western mentors to undermine the role of the presidency as the highest expression of the consensus position of the multinational Bosnia-Herzegovina society on key issues. Let me recall here that the system of balance of interest of three constituent peoples and two entities is at the heart of the Dayton Peace Agreement, the agreement which put an end to the bloody civil war in Yugoslavia. The sponsors of this initiative initially misled the members of the Assembly. They claimed that the resolution would lead to reconciliation and concealed at the same time that it doesn't have the main element, the agreement of all peoples and entities of the country. Even the very fact that the draft was introduced and discussed led to an increase of tension in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in the Balkans in general. This is illustrated by many thousand-strong demonstrations in Banja Luka, by the letters and statements made by the Serb member of the presidency, Cvijanovic, and the statements made by Serbian representative at the Security Council on the 30th of April and 15th of May. The fact that the issue under discussion today has an obvious legal dimension is also shown in the statement made on the 22nd of May by the National Assembly of the Republika Srpska. We would like to draw your attention to the fact that it's totally inappropriate to draw a parallel between the resolution on the genocide in Rwanda and today's decision on Srebrenica. The draft GA resolution in Rwanda, before consideration in General Assembly, was agreed domestically and then within a regional group, the African Union. In the case of this resolution, we saw nothing even remotely like an attempt to agree on a general approach. Instead of that, the group of friends prepared and submitted to all the draft as a final product, a take it or leave it thing, and use a couple of rounds of formal consultations as cover. All of the appeals made by the responsible members of the UN, including Russia and Serbia, to return the issue of the date of commemoration to the national level, to make sure it's discussed by all three constituent peoples of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and making sure there is a single position in the region, was rejected. But we have amongst the co-sponsors Germany, US, France, UK, Finland, Ireland, Italy, Liechtenstein, and even New Zealand. The Netherlands had even had few scruples to join in the co-sponsors. The Netherlands, whose peacekeeping battalion played a disgraceful role in the tragedy of Srebrenica in 1995. One thing is clear here, that the sponsors of the decision today are acting intentionally, pushing Bosnia and Herzegovina closer to confrontation without any regard for the price the country paid in the course of the civil war in the 90s. At the time, 100,000 people died, and there were many bloody tragedies of this country extended to Bosniaks and Serbs and Croats, and there are many in number. We are left with the impression that this is done to make sure that the people of Bosnia never reconcile, and we can see in these acts a threat to peace and security in the country and the region as a whole. All of this is cynical and hypocritical. But what is even more surprising is that the main sponsor of this resolution is Germany. Germany, the country which in the 20th century started 2 world wars, killed millions of people in concentration camps, responsible for mass atrocities in Africa, and participated most actively in the breakdown of Yugoslavia and the bombings of Sarajevo in 1995. The country is now trying, within the UN General Assembly, to lecture others about the importance of national reconciliation. We are convinced that Germany has no moral authority to even mention the term of genocide to describe anything other than their own atrocious crimes. Let me recall that the UN, in whose hall we are here today, was created because of the crimes committed by Nazi Germany with the goal of preventing such crimes against humanity once and for all. We would like to also point out that through this step, the sponsors of the project eliminated the status quo we had on the basis of General Assembly Resolution 69323, declaring the 9th of December as the International Day of All Genocides and opened a Pandora's box. Let me recall here the decision of the General Assembly on genocide and other crimes by Nazi Germany against the peoples of the Soviet Union during the Great Patriotic War in 1941 and 1945 never happened, whereas these crimes by the Nazi regime took the lives of 27 million of Soviet citizens. Many European peoples also suffered, and the Serbs were hit very hard. We did not forget this, we will not forget that. No one and nothing is forgotten. Mr. President, we cannot overlook here the statements made by a number of delegations on the importance of abiding by the rulings of the International Tribunal on the former Yugoslavia and the ICJ. ITFU and its successor, the residual mechanism created to ensure there's impartial justice, have failed at this task completely. Their biased and politicized decisions did not in any way help with ensuring lasting reconciliation in Balkans. ITFU and the residual mechanisms only helped deepen the differences on the Balkans. The responsibility for the events of the 1990s they placed almost exclusively on the Serbs and ignored the numerous crimes committed by other parties to the conflict. As a result of that, the voices of Serbian victims were not heard. They didn't get justice. ITFU and the mechanism it's as though they didn't see the crimes committed against Serbs. True justice does not work that way. Not to mention the fact that the body of evidence of ITFU, based to a large degree on questionable legal notions developed by the tribunal, the rulings, thousands of pages long, but the subjective component of the crime of genocide came from a witness retelling of one phone call and one side of that phone call. The ICJ decided not to delve into the detail and just decided to accept the ITFU conclusions on faith. In their separate opinions of the decision made by the 26th of February 2007, a number of justices stated so openly. Mr. President, we've heard many times that the resolution of today was only to close a gap, confirm the rulings of international courts, and facilitate lasting national reconciliation. But it's bitterly ironic that the voting today showed to what extent the world community is divided both on Srebrenica and the aforementioned decisions. Passing this resolution is a Pyrrhic victory for its sponsors. What did they get? If the goal of the sponsors was to divide the General Assembly, something we warned them about, then they've succeeded brilliantly. I thank you.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation for his statement, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Brazil to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Brazil abstained on the draft resolution concerning the International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica. The vote does not imply or raise any doubt whatsoever about the nature of the massacre of Bosnian civilians in Srebrenica in July 1995. In 2004, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia defined the massacre as genocide. In 2007, the International Court of Justice also recognized the massacre as genocide. Much less does our position on the votes today mean the slightest variation on Brazil's firm and clear condemnation of the genocide in Srebrenica. Here and now we reiterate such condemnation in the strongest terms. Our abstention was based on an assessment of the circumstances surrounding the submission of, the consultations on, and the response to the draft resolution. We were and remain concerned with the acrimony and deep division it has caused at the UN and in the region, especially in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Resolutions of this kind are supposed to bring the international community together in helping parties to past conflicts, celebrate the memory of victims, strengthen the cause of justice, and build lasting peace. In other words, such resolutions are meant to help heal wounds and assist former enemies to move forward. Unfortunately, the circumstances around the draft we voted on today did exactly the opposite. We felt we could not be part of it. We deeply regret it. It is our hope that all concerned parties, in full acknowledgement of the horrors of the past, will redouble their efforts to build a future of peace. In so doing, they will be certainly assisted by us all. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Brazil, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Vietnam.
Mr. President, Vietnam condemns crimes of genocide in the strongest term and has made concrete efforts and meaningful actions to end genocide and the impunity for this crime. It is founded on our utmost respect for the value of human life, our unwavering commitment to protect civilians, and Vietnam's consistent policy to uphold the UN Charter and international law. As a party to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, we hold our national obligations under this convention and other relevant international commitments very seriously. During our tenure as non-permanent member of the Security Council in 2020-2021, Vietnam chaired the informal working group on international tribunals and supported the fulfillment of the mandate of the International Residual Mechanism for the Criminal Tribunals. We also joined consensus in adopting a resolution on International Day on commemoration and dignity of the victims of the crime of genocide and of the prevention of this crime in its 69th session. Mr. President, we firmly believe that peace, stability, and development are essential prerequisites to eradicate the root causes of genocide and any conflict. It is therefore a matter of priority to promote national reconciliation, dialogue, and unity among the peoples and groups in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in the region, and thus contribute to the stability and development of this region. The General Assembly is the best forum to promote consensus and solidarity among member states in the fight against genocide and other atrocity crimes. The proclamation of an international day should help unite, not divide concerned parties in the country as well as states in the region. Nevertheless, it is clear that consensus has not been reached on this matter in this context. With that in mind, my delegation has abstained during the vote on the draft resolution. We call on parties to continue engaging in dialogue in order to reach a common understanding and approach on these issues that will garner universal support from international community. I thank you, Mr. President.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of Vietnam for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ghana.
Mr. President, Ghana regrets that as a result of the absence of national and regional consensus on the presentation of the draft resolution contained in document A/78/L67, they had to abstain on the vote on the intention to declare 11 July of each year as the International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 95 Genocide in Srebrenica. Our regrets are twofold. First, the acts of genocide committed in and around Srebrenica in 95 stands as one of the worst atrocities committed in the former Yugoslavia during the wars of the 1990s and should serve as the rallying point for the multi-ethnic society of Bosnia and Herzegovina to heal the wounds of the past and forge a national reconciliation for the future of the country. Secondly, the absence of national and regional consensus for this important initiative has undermined its credibility as a reference point for a genuine reflection and commemoration that can serve the cause of peace and stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Indeed, Ghana is of the belief that the collective remembrance of historical events such as the Srebrenica genocide should hinge upon a broad national and regional acceptance and solidarity, and should reinforce the nation-building and conciliatory efforts that have been ongoing in Bosnia and Herzegovina since the Dayton Accords. As we continue to honor the victims and survivors of Srebrenica, we are reminded of the words of former Secretary General Kofi Annan, who said, "Their grief cannot be assuaged and must not be forgotten." For Ghana, therefore, our long-standing commitment and support for the principles of international law and international humanitarian law remain unbroken, and our unequivocal condemnation of the heinous crimes that occurred against 8,000 young men and boys in July 95 in Srebrenica continues to hold. Their stories cannot be relegated to the annals of history, nor their sufferings and pains obscured by national and regional discord. Instead, what they have gone through should serve as a unifying factor through which all Bosnians can come together in defiance of ethnic and religious divides to build a future based on social cohesion and mutual respect. To conclude, Ghana remains supportive of all attempts in Bosnia and Herzegovina to promote interreligious and interethnic reconciliation. It is crucial that all relevant actors in the country work towards fostering an atmosphere of national unity, peace and security. We once again stand in solidarity with the victims and survivors of Srebrenica, genocide and reiterate the need for international cooperation to ensure that present and future generations are liberated from the scourge of genocide. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Ghana, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Singapore to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Singapore voted in favor of the draft resolution L67, International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica, in line with Singapore's consistent support for international law, given the International Court of Justice and International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia's rulings that the Srebrenica massacre was a genocide. However, we are disappointed that the draft resolution, intended to rally the international community, was not only unable to garner consensus, but may rekindle divisions within and between countries. In this regard, we urge the core group and sponsors of this draft resolution to take into account the concerns and sensitivities of all peoples whose communities have suffered losses in the Bosnian War when commemorating the International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica. We also urge other member states tabling draft resolutions on commemorative days or years to continue the long-standing practice of seeking consensus to reflect the unity of the United Nations and the international community. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Singapore and now recognize the distinguished representative of Panama.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, sir. Panama has a firm commitment to the principles enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, in the Convention on the Prevention and Sanctioning of the Crime of Genocide, and reaffirms its condemnation of any event which is recognized by relevant international bodies as an act of genocide. These actions undermine international humanitarian law and are a breach of it and the fundamental laws of humanity, leaving a scar, an indelible scar, on all humanity. As a result of this commitment, Panama supported the resolution of 2015, with which this General Assembly designated the International Day for the commemoration and dignification of victims of genocide and for the prevention of this crime. It was approved by consensus and bore witness to the value attached to the expressions of recognition of those who were victims of acts which are repudiated by the international community. Establishing a day of commemoration and reflection is timely in order to create awareness about the immense human tragedy that atrocious crimes create and the urgent need to prevent such crimes from being committed again anywhere in the world. For the families of the victims, it provides an opportunity to have a specific day to honor and commemorate their loved ones. And it's a way of dignifying their memory and an opportunity to renew the shared commitment of preventing these actions from being repeated and working towards genuine reconciliation for the affected parties. Everyone is a victim. The dead, the family members, those who inflicted the damage. There are victims and shared suffering which needs to be overcome. Reconciliation and dialogue are the only path, the only way to heal the wounds and look at each other face to face in the eye with the hope of healing the divisions. It is not a time to point any fingers or blame. We need to look at the victims and the needs of perpetuating their memories. We recognize that the process of reconciliation is prolonged and arduous. It's necessary to give up resentment and open the way for healing and peaceful and prosperous reconciliation, which will lead to the political peace amongst all concerned parties. Panama reaffirms the principles enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Convention on the Prevention and Sanctioning of the Crime of Genocide, and abstained from voting on this resolution we just considered. because we believe that it is unavoidable that all concerned parties in the events that this resolution wishes to highlight must work towards a path of dialogue and heal open wounds, and only the will of the involved parties will allow them to overcome this. You have to lay the foundation to work in that direction. The goal of reconciliation and the goal of this resolution will be lost otherwise. Thank you, sir.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of Panama, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Peru to take the floor.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. President, earlier we have indicated that the draft resolutions presented under the topic entitled Culture of Peace should enjoy consensus of the whole membership, since it is a topic that's intimately linked to one of the purposes of the United Nations. For that reason, Peru constructively participated in the negotiations process of this draft resolution and has maintained open channels for dialogue with all involved parties, whom we encourage to adopt a perspective that would work towards a negotiated solution between the parties. Unfortunately, that was not possible, and for the first time, member states have had to vote on a resolution that seeks to commemorate the victims of a genocide and provide for reflection in that regard. Given this situation, my delegation wishes to raise a number of issues in order to clarify our position on this matter. First and foremost, Peru reaffirms its position of principle of full respect of international law and the United Nations Charter. In this context, Peru continues to support the work of the international jurisdictional bodies in this matter, including the International Criminal Court and the Court for the former Yugoslavia, the International Tribunal, and the International Court of Justice. In this regard, Peru would recall that both tribunals handed down rulings which determined clearly that acts of genocide were committed in Srebrenica in 1995, in addition to other crimes internationally committed during the conflicts which took place in the territory of the former Yugoslavia. Taking into account that the statute of the International Court of Justice is an integral part of the United Nations Charter, and that the International Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia operated on the basis of mandates handed down by the Security Council under Chapter 7 of the Charter, all member states should recognize their rulings and act accordingly, which would include actions set forth for the implementation of their respective rulings and the scope for each party. This is also applicable to all the obligations under the Convention on the Prevention and Sanction of the Crime of Genocide. Having specified this, I would now like to add a few considerations that Peru took into account in order to define the meaning of its vote. All adoption of measures to prevent and sanction the crime of genocide should immediately and unequivocally be supported, even through a vote if necessary. Such measures would include, for example, adopting a resolution that urges actions being taken as necessary to those ends, or even resolutions that establish coercive measures in the context of Chapter 7 of the Charter in order to prevent the commission of this crime or to establish an accountability mechanism. This would be particularly true for prosecuting and sanctioning those responsible for the crimes. However, in the case of the draft resolution on reflecting and commemorating an act of genocide that already took place and which already has a tribunal with jurisdiction to oversee it, to prosecute and sanction those responsible for the crimes, and that has been complied with, the nature of this situation is different. For resolutions on reflection and commemoration being able to meet their goal appropriately, it's necessary that they be adopted by consensus Only in that way is it possible to create an environment that will allow everyone to focus on the commemoration of the memory of the victims and generating an awareness so that such acts are not repeated in the future. That should be the single and only objective of such resolutions. This is why Peru regrets that for the first time we have had to vote on a resolution of this type. Peru promotes multilateral dialogue as the best way to bring about a consensus in favor of global stability while respecting the sovereignty of states and non-interference in internal affairs. Looking towards implementation of the resolution, Peru would hope that the following steps can be taken in a consensus-based manner. For the concerned parties, this should include full respect of the General Framework Agreement for Peace of Bosnia-Herzegovina, also known as the Dayton Agreements, and other agreements that are relevant that were adopted. Thank you.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of Peru, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Greece to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Greece acknowledges the importance of the United Nations General Assembly resolution establishing the International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica, a tragedy which left our region with a deep and painful wound. In this regard, Greece reiterates its respect for the relevant decision of independent international tribunals regarding Srebrenica, including the International Court of Justice judgment of the 26th February of 2007, stating that genocide was committed in Srebrenica. In the same vein, Greece remains committed, both nationally and at an international level, to the fight against genocide denial and the crime of genocide. However, in the context of the current serious challenges which threaten peace and reconciliation in the Western Balkans, we need initiatives which promote de-escalation and unity and which pave the way towards a common future for the whole region. Yet the resolution just adopted risks being misinterpreted as a message which would undermine efforts towards regional reconciliation and a common European future. Mr. President, the timing of this resolution is also a cause of concern, as it was tabled right after the recent European Council decision to start accession negotiations with Bosnia and Herzegovina, opening a discussion which could jeopardize the positive momentum created by this decision of the European Union. Mr. President, Greece reiterates that the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina and its citizens, and indeed that of the Western Balkans, can only exist within the European Union. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Greece, and now invite the distinguished representative of Montenegro to take the floor.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, allow me to briefly share with you Montenegro's position in light of today's voting. As we all know, the cross-regional core group, jointly chaired by Germany and Rwanda, has presented a draft resolution entitled International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 Genocide in Srebrenica, to be considered for adoption by the General Assembly. Bearing in mind that 2025 marks the 30th anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide, the draft resolution proposed designating 11th of July as the annual International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica. The resolution univocally condemns any denial of Srebrenica genocide as a historical event and urges member states to uphold established facts, including through educational programs, to prevent denial, distortion, and future genocides. It also condemns acts that glorify individuals convicted of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide by international courts, including those responsible for the Srebrenica genocide. Recognizing the significance of the proposed resolution, all ICTY judgments mentioned in the text that determine that acts committed in Srebrenica constitute acts of genocide, as well as the resolution of Srebrenica genocide adopted by the Parliament of Montenegro in 2021, Montenegro has thoroughly examined its content, including its political and legal implications. As a multicultural and multi-ethnic society, Montenegro places a significant value on the culture of remembrance and good neighborly relations, demonstrating sensitivity and understanding to issues essential for peaceful coexistence, cooperation and reconciliation in the region. In addition, these values align not only with one of our key foreign policy objectives of full membership in the EU, to which Montenegro is 100% committed, but also with the principles enshrined in the UN Charter related to peace, justice, respect, human rights, tolerance and solidarity. Our proactive approach and our contributions to such sensitive topic, resulting from extensive communication within the core group, aim to prevent any misunderstandings or misinterpretations of the proposed text. On that note, let me emphasize that the two suggestions which Montenegro has proposed in the preambular part of the resolution aim to achieve precisely that, to clearly and unanimously emphasize the individualized character of accountability for the crime of genocide and to prevent the misuse, be it legal or political, of this resolution for labeling a people or a community as genocidal. Additionally, they contribute to preserving and fostering unity in diversity, which, being the motto of the European Union, points to the European perspective of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also clearly state the importance of maintaining stability within the existing framework of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which can only be achieved through promoting dialogue and eradication of polarization based on international law, as well as the constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Montenegro strongly believes that through these suggestions we have made a significant contribution to ensuring clarity and preventing the politicization and misinterpretation of the essence of the proposed resolution. Consequently, it certainly contributes to the enhancing of the overall confidence in casting your vote on the proposed text of resolution. In conclusion, Montenegro demonstrates compassionate respect for the victims and approaches this sensitive topic by actively promoting peace, reconciliation, and the development of friendly relations and cooperation between nations as the only viable foundation of a common, prosperous future. I thank you, Mr. President.
The distinguished representative of Montenegro, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Sierra Leone to take the floor.
Mr. President, informed by our difficult experience of a decade of armed conflict, characterized by perpetration of some of the serious crimes of international concern, and our transitional justice process, including the investigation, trial and conviction of those who bore the greatest responsibility for the atrocity crimes by the Special Court of Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone voted in favor of draft resolution A/78/L.69/Rev1, which through its adoption inter alia designates July 11 as the International Day of Reflection and Remembrance of the 1995 Srebrenica genocide. Similarly, owing to the valuable lessons learned in our path to reconciliation and inclusion, guided by the roadmap for national healing and cohesion, charted by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, we regret that draft resolution A/78/L.69/Rev1 did not enjoy the necessary consensus at both the domestic and international levels, recalling, for instance, the solidarity of the international community in the adoption of resolutions 58/234 and 69/323. Mr. President, in noting the challenged process issues and having considered the spirit, intendment and provisions of Article 27 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, the delegation of Sierra Leone wishes to make the following critical observations. Firstly, we acknowledge the finality of the judicial finding of the International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia that the Srebrenica massacre was genocide, as affirmed by the International Court of Justice, agreeing with the finding of the ICTY in application of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. The matter is therefore settled on the basis of law, and Sierra Leone is compelled by its commitment to accountability and therefore supportive of efforts to not only commemorate but end impunity for international crimes such as genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes and aggression. Secondly, Sierra Leone further firmly acknowledges that the judicial findings on the Srebrenica genocide does not impose any collective responsibility. The ruling of the International Court of Justice does not attribute collective responsibility. We will therefore reject any attempt to attribute collective responsibility. In drawing from our transitional justice experience, we emphasize the importance of our integrated justice and reconciliation process in achieving Bosnia and Herzegovina's vision for a diverse, inclusive, peaceful, and prosperous state, addressing the legitimate concerns raised by relevant parties in an inclusive manner. This may include acknowledging all of the serious crimes committed by all sides in the conflict as necessary step towards lasting reconciliation among all ethnicities. We know that today's action seeks to preserve a country's shared determination through inter alia, the education of future generations and operation of necessary accountability mechanisms to prevent the events that led up to, surrounded, and occurred in Srebrenica in 1995, forever happening again. On this basis, we affirm our support towards reconciliation, peace building, and sustainable development of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thirdly, Sierra Leone is mindful of the fragile peace and security situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina and its intricate governance structure as outlined in the 1995 Dayton Accords. We are further mindful of the consensus basis of the functioning of the presidency. We therefore deeply regret the absence of consensus and inclusion and report lack of consultation in the national process, thereby implicating the necessary unanimous solidarity of the General Assembly. Let me conclude, Mr. President, by reiterating our commitment to the principles enshrined in the UN Charter, the Dayton Accords, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, essential to ensuring peace and security amongst the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina and all the peoples and nations of the world. I thank you.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of Sierra Leone, and I now invite the distinguished representative of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to take the floor.
Mr. President, thank you for giving me the floor. Today, St. Vincent and the Grenadines voted to abstain from the resolution entitled International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 Genocide in Srebrenica. We acknowledge that the devastation wrought by the wars in Yugoslavia, including the Srebrenica genocide as recognized by the ICTY and the ICJ, the Balkan region still suffers the consequences of these wars. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is concerned that the lack of inclusivity within the process in the lead up to the tabling of this resolution may adversely impact the ongoing efforts towards reconciliation in a region where peace and harmony are already fragile. St. Vincent and the Grenadines supports initiatives that can strengthen the process of reconciliation and peace while avoiding politicization and adopting an inclusive approach that garners the support of all parties. In light of the sensitive, complex, historical, and geopolitical nature of the issue at hand, St. Vincent and the Grenadines emphasizes that it is prudent for dialogue and confidence-building initiatives to be prioritized at this moment in order to avoid the emergence of new tensions and the deepening of existing divides within Bosnia and Herzegovina and the wider Balkan region. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Tunisia.
Shukran. Thank you, Mr. President. Tunisia has voted in favor of the draft resolution on the genocide in Srebrenica out of our firm belief and adherence to the principles of international law and international humanitarian law and the Charter of the United Nations, as well as the principles of human rights, foremost of which the right to life and the right to self-determination. Tunisia stresses the importance of the concerted efforts of the international community to prevent the repetition of such atrocities. However, it is equally important to stress that all situations must be addressed in a responsible manner, independent of political calculation, selectivity, and double standards. Such resolutions must be landmark points that stress the international community's adherence to international legitimacy, humanitarian instruments, and upholding the purposes of the Charter towards the promotion of human rights, and they should not be limited to simple commemoration. They should be a promotion for and never again for peoples to fall victim to violations and crimes. This resolution must be a factor towards promoting reconciliation and peace in the Balkan area. And on this occasion, we reiterate the demand for the international community and the Security Council to shoulder their legal and moral responsibility towards the war crimes and current genocide that is escalating against the Palestinian people at the hand of the occupation forces for 8 months, that has claimed the lives of more than 35,000 individuals, with thousands injured and 2 million forcibly displaced persons. Also, we call for compelling the occupying forces to implement UN resolutions promptly and without conditions, and they should be held accountable for all their crimes against the Palestinian people. I thank you.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of Tunisia, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Mexico.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, sir. Distinguished colleagues, first and foremost, let me express Mexico's respect and solidarity with the victims and their families of the genocide that took place in 1995 in Srebrenica, and also for all the survivors of the Balkan conflict of the 1990s and the consequences. Mexico recognizes the importance of reflecting on these crimes and commemorating the victims. Also, my country recognizes the rulings handed down both by the International Court of Justice and by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. Mexico rejects the denial of genocide, or what was committed, or glorification of war criminals. Srebrenica is a live reminder that genocide does not happen from one morning to the next or overnight. There's an escalation that takes place over time that then becomes a genocide. We regret that such a sensitive topic has been put to a vote, and it was not the result of a consensus. We also regret that the draft resolution L67.Rev1 was not accompanied by due process of inclusive consultations, especially with countries in the Balkans region, and we are worried that the initiative does not enjoy full support of the tripartite presidency of Bosnia-Herzegovina. Mexico believes that inclusive...
Okay, break muna natin, no? Kaso ng genocide.
Walang
Female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.
Okay. Yung sa backlab na yan, naalala ba natin si former President Donovan Milosevic? Donovan Milosevic ba yun? Okay, nagpakamatay sa kulungan. Okay, magpangamatay sa kulungan yun, no? Okay, dahil nahatulan ng kaso ng genocide. So, mga kana. So, katulad yan kay yung dyan sa kaso ng Gaza yan. Genocide din. Mga ganun yan. Okay, kung makulong yan. Sige. Pagpatuloy natin, no? Ang kasaysayan, anniversary yata ito ng itong anniversary yata ito ng genocide. Sige.
Dialogue amongst all concerned states and relevant parties in the region is the heart of initiatives such as this one work towards reconciliation and strengthen efforts to promote the rights of victims to truth, justice, and reparations. It is for these reasons that my country abstained. We call on all states of the region to redouble their efforts to deepen dialogue in favor of reconciliation and peace. Thank you.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of Mexico, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Slovakia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Slovakia abstained on draft resolution L67-1. Before all else, I wish to place on record that Slovakia remains firmly committed to international law and norms prohibiting genocide and mass atrocities, and to closer international cooperation to ensure these crimes do not occur in the future. In this regard, the Slovak Republic fully supports ICTY and ICJ and respects their verdicts regarding the genocide, which took place in Srebrenica in July 1995. Mr. President, the stability and prosperity of the Western Balkans has always been one of the key foreign policy priorities for the Slovak Republic since our independence in 1993. Our policy towards the Western Balkans is not only consistent with the international community's commitment to the peace and stability in the region, laid down in the relevant UN documents and political declarations, but also reflects the promise and the reality of tangible European Union membership's perspective for all Western Balkans countries in the near future. We base our relationship and cooperation with the countries of the Western Balkans on the principles of transparency, predictability, dialogue, understanding, recognition, partnership, and the good faith services. All of this is with the aim to contributing positively to the long-lasting consolidation of otherwise fragile interethnic reconciliation. It is with concern that we observe the recent negative dynamics across the Western Balkans region, such as the growing challenges to the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, secessionist rhetoric in one part of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and challenges on the EU path of other countries in the region, often related to growing political polarization and interethnic tensions. Mr. President, while acknowledging the importance of addressing historical injustices and promoting reconciliation sooner rather than later, we believe that
Bosnia and
timing and inclusiveness are equally important for its outcome and overall impact. We hope that moving forward with caution, engagement, and in dialogue will eventually break the cycle in which the past suffering is used as the justification for new or renewed conflict. Therefore, we encourage all parties to engage in constructive, well-intended, and proactive political initiatives that prioritize lowering of tensions, healing historical wounds, and to engage in good faith towards reconciliation and building bridges between communities. To conclude, Mr. President, the Slovak Republic remains committed to the international law and justice, peace, stability, and prosperity of the Western Balkans. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Slovakia for his statement, and I now invite the distinguished representative of the Syrian Arab Republic to take the floor.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my delegation reiterates its condolences and sympathy to the victims of the incident that occurred in Srebrenica in 1995 and their families. While affirming its rejection of human rights violations and the resulting human suffering, it also stresses its categorical rejection of the politicization of human rights issues and tabling biased draft resolutions and instrumentalizing international mechanisms as a means to target specific states. My delegation found itself today obliged to vote against the draft resolution addressing the traumatic events that took place in Srebrenica almost 3 decades ago for 2 fundamental reasons. The first is the procedural flaws that accompany the drafting process, which were not characterized by the required transparency and openness, but were carried out behind closed doors and without prior consultation or adequate coordination with the parties concerned or consideration of their concerns. This prevented the achievement of a consensus on the draft in a way that would avoid any attempts to stir up tensions or open the wounds of the past, and leading to strife, destabilizing the region in service of political agendas of some Western states. The second reason is that some of the Western sponsors of the draft resolution, most particularly Germany, are today publicly engaged in supporting the Israeli occupying entity politically, militarily, and in terms of militarily and financially to enable it to commit genocide crimes and grave violations against the Palestinian people in Gaza. You're all aware of the death toll among civilians and the number of those who are injured among the Palestinians, mostly women and children. This stresses the false allegations by these states, their bad faith, and their quest to deflect attention away from their direct involvement in the genocidal acts committed by the Israeli occupying forces for 8 months in occupied Palestine. Of course, these are an extension of their crimes for around 8 decades. Mr. President, we will never see those Western states take the initiative to provide justice to the victims of the extermination of the Palestinian people, or to hold the Israeli occupation authorities accountable for their crimes, or to talk about the NATO crimes in the Balkans, or the crimes of the so-called illegitimate international coalition established under the false pretext of combating the terrorist group of Daesh. These acts of aggression by this illegal coalition has claimed the lives of thousands of innocent civilians in my country, Syria, including when this illegal coalition destroyed the city of Raqqa, bringing it tumbling on the heads of its people, where they are buried under the rubble. All this, Mr. President, uncovers the ill intention of these countries, these states, and their politicization and exploitation of the humanitarian issues in the service of their own agendas, which my country strongly rejects and condemns. And today's vote has showed that more than 100 member states of this organization have chosen to either vote against or voted in abstention or were absent in this vote because they have legitimate concerns about this resolution and the double standards and manipulating human rights issues, and they have concerns, legitimate concerns vis-a-vis the politicization and double standards, and this is an issue that needs to be avoided in the United Nations. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Syrian Arab Republic, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Thailand.
Mr. President, Thailand joins the international community in reiterating that acts of genocide constitute the most heinous crimes and gravest human rights violations, as well as threats towards peace and security among nations. Thailand reaffirms once again our commitment to prevent and punish the crime of genocide. We attach utmost importance to holding the perpetrators accountable. Our commitment is reflected in the adoption of the 2003 Resolution on International Day of Reflection on the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, the 2020 Resolution on International Day of Reflection on the 1994 genocide again to see in Rwanda, as well as our co-sponsorship of the 2015 Resolution on International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide and of the Prevention of this crime. Mr. President, while recognizing that the acts committed in Srebrenica in 1995 amounted to the crime of genocide, as established by International Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals, and the International Court of Justice, and while reaffirming our strong opposition to impunity for genocide, Thailand believes that a resolution on this particularly important issue should be adopted by consensus, as has been the practice in the past. Thailand also supports a more inclusive drafting process and consultation among the relevant parties, with a view to expressing solidarity with all victims and families of those affected, and to preventing the recurrence of such crime. It is for this reason that Thailand decided to abstain. Mr. President, in conclusion, I wish to reaffirm Thailand's support to all efforts to promote peace and stability in the region. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Thailand for his statement, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Pakistan to take the floor.
I thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Pakistan has voted in favor of the draft resolution designating 11 July as the International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica. This tragedy was among the most appalling episodes in recent human history and was acknowledged as genocide by both the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia and the International Court of Justice. There was a clear legal determination by the ICJ to establish the commission of the crime of genocide in Srebrenica in July 1995. Numerous resolutions of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers have underscored the steadfast support of the OIC member states for maintaining the unity, territorial integrity, sovereignty, and international standing of Bosnia-Herzegovina. This support is grounded in the commitment to uphold Bosnia and Herzegovina's internationally recognized borders, fostering its ability to function autonomously, fulfill its international obligations, and preserve its multi-ethnic, multicultural, and multi-religious character. Mr. President, it is imperative for the United Nations to be resolute in its commitment to preventing the recurrence of the genocides committed in Srebrenica and Rwanda. The international community must remain vigilant in detecting and responding to any signs of a similar pattern of targeting ethnic groups or religious minorities, which are being manifested in certain states today. I thank you, Mr. President.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of Pakistan for his statement, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Saudi Arabia to take the floor.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, Mr. President, thank you. Of course, we regret that the draft resolution was not adopted by consensus. My delegation regrets that consensus was not reached on resolutions pertaining to international days. We voted today in favor of the draft resolution because this draft resolution has a human dimension. This resolution should allow for the commemoration of these tragic events which were described as genocide. We also voice our solidarity with the families of victims. We also categorically reject the crime of genocide wherever and by whomever perpetrated. We call on all parties to share the lessons of to learn the lessons of the past and to look forward positively towards the future to ensure they never again and to ensure that such crimes are not repeated again. Peaceful coexistence should be supported among the people of the Bosnia and Herzegovina, regardless of any discrimination and with no priority given to any ethnicity or race over another. This will serve the interests of the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this will also serve the interests of the neighbors of Bosnia in the Balkan region. We should preserve the humanitarian dimension of such a resolution. These resolutions should be comprehensive so that they achieve their purposes. If we do not respect the humanitarian dimension of such resolutions, these resolutions will not achieve their purposes and their credibility will be undermined. These resolutions will also be politicized and used in an irresponsible manner. This will run against the good intentions of those who support or vote in favor of such resolutions. This might also ignite strife and may encourage countries to uncover the past, and we all do not want to summon or conjure up these memories of the past. This is why we should always focus on the humanitarian purposes of such resolutions, and we should adopt a more comprehensive approach. Of course, we all seek never again, and we do not want the recurrence of the genocide of 1995, and that's why, and also similarly, we should all stop the current genocide that is ongoing as we meet today in this hall under the agenda item, the culture of peace. The Israeli occupation forces have for more than 7 months been perpetrating their crimes. To date, more than 35,000 Palestinians were killed, mostly women and children. They were killed by airstrikes, by the destruction and the systematic starvation. This has led to a major humanitarian plight that worsens day by day. Thank you, Mr. President.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and now invite the distinguished representative of Armenia.
Mr. President, Armenia would like to make the following statement in connection with the adoption of the draft resolution entitled International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 Genocide in Srebrenica. Genocides are dark stains in human history. They constitute the type of crime that transcends borders and devastates communities. The Armenian people understand deeply the pain and suffering that genocide inflicts. Our history compels us to advocate for justice, accountability, and remembrance. Armenia has consistently worked on advancing multilateral efforts towards the universalization of Genocide Convention, combating denialism, and promoting education and remembrance of past crimes. Armenia has consistently worked to contribute to the prevention agenda and to uphold the values of humanity and justice. Genocide prevention, accountability for the past crimes, rights to truth, and guarantees for non-recurrence should guide the UN system in addressing multitude of grave violations that can lead to war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansings, and other atrocity crimes. Mr. President, Armenia has traditionally sponsored resolutions on genocide prevention and commemoration. Introduced first the resolution at the Commission on Human Rights back in 1998. Subsequently, the scope and the substance of the resolutions on the subject have been fundamentally enriched. At the forefront of our efforts stand the recurrent resolutions on genocide prevention, which have been tabling at the UN Human Rights Council, as well as the General Assembly, establishing the International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide and of the Prevention of this Crime. The GA Resolution 69/323 stands as a cornerstone in our collective efforts to raise awareness and to honor those who have fallen victims of past inaction, as well as to stress the importance for collective tribute and respect towards victims, survivors, and descendants of all genocides, crimes adjudicated in the international courts of law, and those whose perpetrators never received justice. We are strongly convinced that recognition and condemnation of genocides, commemoration and tribute to the dignity of the victims constitute the cornerstone of genuine reconciliation between communities, peoples, and states. Yet we note that tabling of this draft and certain procedural aspects created sharp diversion of position not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina but also within the international community. Mr. President, prevention of genocide is a critical responsibility entrusted to the international community, and every effort must be taken to avert such crimes. Armenia emphasizes the importance of ensuring that UN Office on Genocide Prevention and the Special Advisor have the necessary resources and capacity to effectively carry out their mandates. It is essential that their actions are guided by the principles of objectivity, impartiality, and integrity. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate Armenia's commitment to working with the international community to strengthen mechanisms that prevent genocide. In doing so, we honor the memory of Srebrenica victims and reaffirm our resolve to support efforts to prevent genocide and mass atrocities wherever they occur. Thank you.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of Armenia, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Guatemala to take the floor.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. President, thank you very much for giving me the floor. Guatemala would like to highlight the importance that we attach to the rulings handed down by the International Court of Justice, the Criminal International Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, and the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals, all of whom declared a genocide in Srebrenica. We recognize their work, and we would recall here that genocide is a crime under international law that is an upheaval for the conscience of humanity and is of transcendental importance for all nations gathered here today. In those terms, we are committed to preventing it and sanctioning it. As a country that promotes peace and that is respectful of international law and the fundamental principles enshrined in the UN Charter, we believe that the atrocities committed in the past should not be forgotten. Commemoration is a crucial act to bring dignity to the victims, to promote justice, and prevent other similar atrocities. Educating future generations with a view to promoting solidarity and reconciliation amongst interested parties and guaranteeing non-repetition. Guatemala abstained from voting on the resolution entitled International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the Genocide of 1995 in Srebrenica. We believe that a resolution of this nature should enjoy consensus from all the interested parties, and that is fundamental because it reflects a collective position that's stronger than and more committed to the historical memory and humanitarian values which are universal. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Guatemala for his statement, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Algeria.
شكرا سيدة.
Thank you, Mr. President. We abstained from voting on the draft resolution today on the International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica. We regret that the draft resolution was not adopted by consensus to pay tribute to the victims of this 29-year-old humanitarian tragedy. In this context, we would like to note the following. Firstly, Algeria reiterates its unwavering commitment and respect of the principles and purposes of the UN Charter and international law, including international humanitarian law and international human rights law. Following its independence, Algeria acceded to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Secondly, Algeria strongly condemns all genocide, all war crimes, and all crimes against humanity, including the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica, which claimed thousands of innocent lives. Thirdly, Algeria reiterates its steadfast support for the independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina. This support guides our positions in relation to this friendly country, including at the Security Council. Fourthly, in this context, Algeria believes that the 1999 Dayton Agreement remains the only framework that can preserve security and peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina until reconciliation, progress, and welfare are achieved. Algeria is confident that political actors in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the region at large must overcome their disputes, but this can only be achieved through collective action, peaceful coexistence, and integration in a spirit of cooperation, constructive dialogue, and mutual respect. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Algeria and now invite Oman to take the floor.
Mr. President, the Sultanate of Oman reiterates its principled position in condemning crimes of genocide. We support efforts to reflect on these crimes and to hold their perpetrators accountable in accordance with international law. In our view, the 1995 Srebrenica genocide must not be open to interpretation or to skepticism. We support an international day to commemorate this genocide in line with the relevant declaration of the OIC. The international community must take all legal measures to prevent the perpetration of similar crimes in the future. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Oman and now invite the distinguished representative of Argentina to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Genocide is a manifestation of barbarism which humanity has had since its presence on the planet. Nobody is neutral, nor can anyone be neutral vis-a-vis it. Argentina is not neutral vis-a-vis genocide, not now, never. It is a policy of state, and the Convention to Prevent and Sanction Genocide is part of our national constitution with the same legal rank, and we are part of all of the initiatives to prevent genocide. Argentina is unfortunately and sadly in the list of countries that's had to suffer the commission of atrocious crimes. We know the pain of looking behind and how hard it is to rebuild reconciliation, and memory. We firmly reject denial of these humanitarian disasters, and with equal force, we appreciate the efforts towards justice and to punish the perpetrators. It's not possible to have reconciliation if these processes don't take place. At the same time, we understand that the correct way to use memory to guarantee non-repetition is to encourage a process of truth based on dialogue. That should include the obligation of the dialogue, but without necessary deadlines. Societies need time. These crimes are an abyss in the history of these peoples, and only through consensus and deep-seated reflection and unending patience is it possible to convert memory into a powerful tool for prevention. The parties, if their views are very diverse and we have to vote on this, that means our work on prevention will not be useful. We think it would have been more appropriate, rather than having a vote, to have convened a wide process of reflection to move in the direction proposed by the draft resolution and achieve a language that enjoys consensus. Perhaps this needed more time, but it would have been possible to achieve better results for the future. And it's never too late to try, and we are prepared to work towards this again in the future, and Argentina is always prepared to fight for human rights. And for these reasons just mentioned, Argentina abstained on this draft resolution. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Argentina, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Hungary to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hungary strongly deplores the events unfolded 30 years before in front of our eyes. We sense that the international community is united in this respect. We continue to empathize with the heartbreak of war victims and their families and sympathize with their misery. Mr. President, the tragedy of 1995 unfolded in Hungary's close vicinity. Let us hope that in this case, history will never repeat itself. Hungary is determined to foster peace and prosperity in the Western Balkan region and remains vigilant against the escalation of any tensions. It is this context in which we pose the question, does this draft resolution focus on the maintenance of the stability in the region, or does it create further divisions that reopen old wounds? Hungary is not convinced that this resolution is instrumental in promoting peace and stability in the Western Balkan region. We are of the view that such initiatives should only be taken on board and placed on the agenda of the General Assembly if they do not result in, directly or indirectly, any disturbance of the peace and stability of the Western Balkans. All of our endeavors must focus on building bridges and trust, not division. For these reasons, Hungary was unable to lend support to this resolution. Mr. President, by closing, we wish to convey our greatest appreciation to the President of the Republic of Serbia, who is here with us today. We commend him not only for promoting development in our neighboring country, Serbia, but also for the fact that the Hungarian community could always count on him. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Hungary, and I now invite the distinguished representative of the United Republic of Tanzania to take the floor.
Mr. President, the United Republic of Tanzania welcomes the adoption of the resolution titled International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of 1995 Genocide in Srebrenica by the General Assembly today. It is undeniable that the genocide took place in Srebrenica in 1995. This has been confirmed by the International Court of Justice, as well as the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, and in this regard, there is no doubt about the occurrence of genocide in Srebrenica. Indeed, Mr. President, the appalling and inhuman acts that led to the massacre of around 8,000 Bosnian Muslim men and boys in Srebrenica deserve the recognition of this august body, just as the victims of genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda and of the Holocaust before that. Tanzania see no harms for the family of the nation to designate days of commemoration and reflection of genocide and other heinous crimes which should serve to give meaning to the international instrument that our countries have voluntarily codified and ratified. Mr. President, Tanzania has voted in favor of the resolution as a matter of principle. A principle of its foreign policy pertaining to defending and promoting justice and human rights. Owing to this principle, Tanzania has relentlessly advocated and vigorously fought against colonialism, racism, and apartheid in Africa and elsewhere in the world. Similarly, Tanzania unequivocally denounced all forms of discrimination based on race, sex, religion, political orientation, and others. Genocide and other mass atrocity crimes are often a result of such discrimination and lack of regard for other people's dignity. Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, Tanzania's vote today is also in line with its obligations emanating from the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide of 1948, Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court of 1998, the Protocol in Prevention of Genocide, War Crimes, Crimes Against Humanity, and all forms of discrimination under the International Conference on the Great Lakes Region, and other international regional instruments on human rights. Mr. President, Tanzania's commitment to prevention of mass atrocity crimes is remarkably unquestionable. In addition to being part of the legal instrument just mentioned, Tanzania has hosted the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, ICTR, and is currently hosting the International Residual Mechanism for both ICTY, the former Yugoslavia, and ICTR, Rwanda. Tanzania also spearheaded the regional forums for prevention of the genocide and was the first country to establish a national committee for the prevention of genocide and mass atrocities. Mr. President, despite today's milestone, we remain gravely concerned and utterly disturbed by attacks against civilians that have or could amount to genocide. This resolution would have meaning for the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the people of the world if we truly unite to prevent genocide wherever it is taking place or is likely to take place. Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, any action contrary to one taken today by Tanzania would have been an affront to the principles and obligations I have just alluded to, and this is the explanation of our vote. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Republic of Tanzania, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. Mr. President, Nigeria abstained in the votes not because we did not recognize the horrors of the past. We recognize the devastation and ills perpetrated against the people of Srebrenica, which was adjudged as genocide. However, Nigeria has always noted that there is no alternative to political dialogue in achieving lasting peace. And it is on this note that we have taken the position to abstain, to call for continued engagement in peace efforts towards collectively healing the wounds of the past, to seek a regional consensus that will ensure collective appreciation with a view to further appeasing the people of the region. And 3, again call for inclusivity in the peace efforts, devoid of politics, sentiments, and discrimination. Although the resolution has been adopted but without consensus, Nigeria wishes to urge that peaceful coexistence can only be achieved in an atmosphere where everyone agrees to build bridges. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Nigeria for his statement. We have heard the last speaker in explanation of vote after the vote. The exercise of the right of reply has been requested. May I remind members that statements in the exercise of the right of reply are limited to 10 minutes for the first intervention and to 5 minutes for the second intervention, and should be made by delegations from their seats. In this regard, I should like to give the floor to His Excellency Alexander Vučić, President of the Republic of Serbia.
Mr. President, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to summarize what has just happened and to reiterate once again that we were right when we spoke about divisions that this type of resolution will cause and inflict, not only in the region where I come from, but even here in this hall. As you remember, it has never happened in the United Nations General Assembly that the vote on genocide issue was not taken by unanimity. It has never happened. This is happening for the first time because some people wanted to use their big political power to politicize this important topic, and they did it. It doesn't matter how much time we warn them to use transparency and inclusiveness and to put it into an entire process. They didn't want to listen to us. At the end, the result is the following. 84 countries voted in favor of the resolution, and 87 countries that were present here did not vote in favor. In any single national parliament, this motion would have failed. This is the only place in the world where it has passed. Wanted to reply to some claims that we heard here. People from some countries were emphasizing the importance of amendments, like their significant necessitation, significant contribution. That was only a significant contribution to bigger confusion. And they just wanted to save their face with those amendments and wanted to deceive some member states on the legal nature of this issue. And once again, we'll mention the issue of legal liability, because they were insisting that this was not against any nation, against any people. This exactly was about that. Because all the people that were indicted on Srebrenica, either crime or genocide or whatever you call it, massacre issue, they have already been convicted and sentenced to prison. All of them. What was the purpose of this resolution? Particularly after we passed the resolution in 2015. The only purpose, the only intention was to put moral and political guilt on one side, on one nation, on the people of Serbia and Republika Srpska as a part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. That was the only intention. And to be very honest, speaking about legitimacy, it failed. Speaking about your big victory or big victory of those who voted in favor, I cannot add anything else. Just wanted to say that those people that wanted to stigmatize Serbian people, they did not succeed, and they will never succeed. They wanted to put a mark on our forehead, and they failed, and they will always fail. And I'm proud that I had a chance today to defend small countries' right to speak publicly and loudly against those very powerful, not insulting anyone, bowing my head before the victims, admitting all our mistakes, all terrible crimes that some of our compatriots committed. But standing here before you proudly and as a dignified Serb that knows that we passed through the most difficult wars throughout our history. We suffered the most in the region of Southeast Europe, not only Balkan area as a nation. But I can assure you, Mr. President, starting from tomorrow, we'll commence the dialogue with our Bosnian compatriots within Serbia, because we have a significant minority of Bosnian people in my country. And we'll not only maintain and keep peace, tranquility and stability of my country, we'll improve our relationship. Now this is behind us, and we'll work on developing peace, and we'll give our contribution to that. At the end, we'd like to say many thanks to all those that did not vote in favor of this resolution. To say thanks to all those that voted in favor, they opened our eyes. Many thanks to them as well. And particularly many thanks to Serbian people that were united more than ever. Nothing could have ever united Serbian people better than what was happening here today. And we stand strong and very proud that we had an opportunity to represent the country of the brave. Thank you very much.
I now call on the representative of Rwanda.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. Mr. President, honoring and remembering victims of genocide is a must. Genocide is a stain on our collective memory, a crime of all crimes, and we must all work to ensure that such heinous crimes of genocide never happen anywhere else again. Mr. President, I had not intended to speak because this resolution was about the 1994 genocide in Srebrenica in honor and memory of the victims. However, the delegate from the DRC used this occasion to lay baseless allegations against my country, Rwanda. It is sadistic and insensitive for DRC to use this occasion when we focus on memory of victims of genocide, to use the platform to lay allegations that are abominable. This that amounts to trivialization and denial of genocide. Mr. President, I want to categorically denounce DRC's allegations. In 1994, Rwanda suffered the most tragic genocide of the 21st century. Over 1 million innocent Rwandan Tutsi were massacred in heinous crimes of murder and horrific genocide. The perpetrators of the genocide went to then Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, where they continued their genocidal activities by targeting Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese Tutsi. Since then, since 1994, there has been systematic genocide of Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese Tutsi in eastern DRC. DRC government supports and collaborates with the genocidal FDLR who continue to perpetrate this genocide. Congolese Tutsi have been systematically murdered, hounded from their ancestral lands, raped, and scattered as refugees for now almost 30 years in places like Rwanda, where we have over 100,000 refugees, in Uganda, in Kenya, and other parts of our region. DRC is the perpetrator of genocide against its own citizens. This is abominable. The activities of genocide and ethnic cleansing of Congolese Tutsi must be condemned in the strongest terms, and perpetrators of these crimes, including officials of the DRC government, the Congolese army, FARDC officers, and their FDLR collaborators and FDR splinter groups who pose an existential threat to Rwanda, must be condemned and brought to justice to account for their crimes. DRC must take full responsibility and ownership of its internal contradiction and internal problems. Externalizing them, including on a platform like this, and blaming its neighbors will not take away its internal problems. It is the full responsibility of DRC government to protect all its citizens without discrimination and without turning them against each other. Running away from this responsibility is an act of cowardice and irresponsibility for any state. Rwanda is a peaceful country that wants to see peace prevail in our region, and we are committed to make our contribution to the realization of peace in our region. Thank you very much.
Since I see there are no further requests for the floor, the General Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of Agenda Item 14. The meeting is adjourned.
Yan po ang kasaysayan ng Europe, no? Okay. Ngayon, ano na? Herzegovina, Bosnia, nahati yun mga suki, no? Okay. Sige, tapos na. Okay, hindi ka pwede magtigas-tigas dito sa daigdig mga suki, no? Kasi may magkuhan din sa iyo. May magbabantay din sa iyo. Hindi ka pwede magpasikat dito sa daigdig mga suki, no? Okay, lalo na po nakakaintindi ng mga proseso. Okay, intindi po ng sistema. Okay. Kaya nga, warn natin, sa mga mahilig magpasikat, magtigas-tigas dito sa daigdig, hindi po pwede mga suki, no? Kaya, walang patigasan dito. Okay, tapos na po mga suki, no? Over na yung ginawa natin. Okay. Sa pagtulong po mga suki, no? Pag-save, pagtulong. Okay, kahit ng pamagitan po ng mga ganito. Okay, at least makatulong tayo. Makatulong. Okay, hanggang dito. Ang programa ito. Okay, consolidated news natin. Okay, sa araw ito. Ayan. Sa programa po rin consolidated news natin. Okay, dito po sa News Online Channel ADLSN TV News Corporation. Okay. Sa programa halo-halo special opinion balita at iba pa. Kasama po sa serbisyo publiko tinig ng mamamayan. Ugnayan sa mamamayan. Ayan. Okay. So, paalam tayo sa ating programa. Okay. Wala tayong masamang tinapay, no? Hindi ito para magkaroon ako ng masamang tinapay dito. Atin lang dito, at least, maka-share lang tayo, no? Makabahagi. Okay, sa programa pa rin ng Halo-Halo Special, Opinion, Balita at iba pa. Kasama po sa serbisyo publiko tinig ng mamamayan at sa kaugnayan sa mamamayan. Hindi po pwede magtigas-tigas, no? Okay, ang tao sa daigdig. Kasi may binabantayan ka. Ayan. May magbantay sa iyo kung magtigas-tigas ka. Okay. Maganda pa nga yung magpakumbaba ka eh. Pumatay ka rin ng pumatay, may hangganan din. May sukdulan din. Wala din. Pag yun ang mission mo ay sa buhay pumatay pag may okay, kaya pag may kinagalitan ka dapat patayin mo, hindi po pwede yun. Okay, paalam tayo. This has been Abs Namahan lamang po. Okay, pabalik ako mamayang gabi na.
Walang titigan, walang pinakamulan, at walang pinakamulan
Lolly voice, monster voice.